Good evening, and welcome to Chesapeake Public Schools Family Empowerment Webinar presented by the Office of Family and Community Engagement, or FACE. I am Lisa Carey, one of the FACE specialists, and our office is under the Department of Engagement, which seeks to create meaningful partnerships in order to inspire, engage, and empower families, educators, and community agencies to support the initiatives of Chesapeake Public Schools. We are typically available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and can be reached by our main phone line at 757-482-5923 or face at cpschools.com. We are excited to offer our families a course catalog entitled Peak Parent University that outlines all of our events for the school year. You can also catch up on pre-recorded webinars, access a wealth of educational resources, and make community connections to promote your family's well-being. Please visit www.cpschools.com and search Peak Parent University. Tonight, joining us from the Office of Exceptional Learning, we have Christina Trinello, who serves the Western Branch Middle, Western Branch High, Jolliffe Middle, Chesapeake Career Center, Chesapeake Center for Student Success, and Crestwood Middle. Please feel free to take a screenshot of the screen should you need to refer to your transitional specialist. We thank you for joining us tonight for the Medicaid Waivers webinar. We are excited to have joining us tonight as a panelist, Ms. Maureen Hollowell from Independent Center Incorporated. Before we begin, I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded to share on our Chesapeake Public Schools YouTube channel. Participants' cameras and the chat feature are disabled. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of this screen. We will answer all questions at the throughout the video. Sorry. So at any time that you have questions, please let us know and put them in the Q&A, and we'll make sure we get them answered. At this time, I will turn the program over to Maureen. Welcome, Maureen, and thank you for being here tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maureen. Thank you for inviting me to be with you this evening to do this presentation about Medicaid home and community-based waivers. And before we get into it a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about the Independent Center, if I might. We're a nonprofit organization. We're based in Norfolk, but we serve Chesapeake and all of the Southside Hampton Road cities. We've been around for over 40 years. We're a disability advocacy organization. We're referred to as a Center for Independent Living. We're a nonprofit, non-residential organization. The majority of our staff, management team, and board are people with significant disabilities. There are 17 centers in Virginia, and we provide 5 core services of advocacy, information and referral, peer mentoring, independent living skills training, and transition services, transition out of an institution, preventing institutionalization, and youth transition. So that's just a little bit about the Independent Center. I got involved in disability advocacy issues. I have an adult daughter who is deaf and has spina bifida. So at the end of this presentation is our contact information. We hope that you'll reach out to us if you have questions after the presentation. And the material that we're going to go over this evening, the PowerPoint presentation, is a part of a grant through our State Developmental Disabilities Council, the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. We have a mentor training program, and we train mentors with our state Medicaid agency to provide this workshop and similar workshops regarding Medicaid services. So I'm just going to begin. We're going to walk through this series of slides. Some things I'm going to go over really quickly because of our time here tonight. I encourage you to ask questions, and I'll try to get to them all. And if we have things that you would rather ask offline, then just give us a call tomorrow or the next day. So, first, Medicaid itself. We need to be sure that we're talking about Medicaid ending in a D, not Medicare. Medicaid was established by the U.S. Congress in 1965 as a way to get health care to people with low income. States do not have to participate in the Medicaid program. All states do. And state programs are very different. They have to provide some core services that are the same, but a lot of eligibility issues, waiting list issues, and other things are established by the states with approval from the federal government. The Medicaid program is a big program, over $18 billion. Only one other program receives more funding from the state, and that's it's just a large program. Now, 50% of the cost of Medicaid comes from the state government and 50% comes from the federal government. So when there's going to be changes made to the Medicaid program, the state Virginia General Assembly gets involved because they have to allocate the money to serve those additional people or provide those additional services. This federal Medicaid agency is referred to as CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and you see their website listed. And then the state agency, the state partner, is DMAS, the Department of Medical Assistance Services. Now, the federal government requires all states that participate in Medicaid to offer core services, these primary services. And these are listed here. They're things that you would expect: hospital care, doctor's care, transportation, x-rays, things like that. All states provide these services in their Medicaid program. They're required to. And then there's a second list of services produced by the federal government, and those are called optional services. And these are the optional services that Virginia chooses to provide. Virginia does not have to provide things such as prescribed drugs. Virginia chooses to provide that. Virginia doesn't have to provide home and community-based waivers. Virginia chooses to provide them. The services that Virginia chooses to provide get added to the Medicaid program because of advocacy, like families like yours, who see the importance of having certain services in the Medicaid program. But these things are not required by federal law. Virginia chooses to provide them. Now, we're going to focus the most of this program this evening on something called a Medicaid waiver, a Medicaid home and community-based waiver. There are dozens of different kinds of waivers. A waiver basically means that the federal government is waiving some rule of federal Medicaid at the request of the state. So the state wants to do something a little different, and they request a waiver or an exception. In the situation that we're here to talk about this evening, they're talking about a big program called Medicaid home and community-based waivers. When somebody gets enrolled in one of these waiver programs in Virginia, they will get a Medicaid card, and they will receive all those optional and mandatory services that you saw on the screen earlier. Okay, so in addition to getting their waiver services, they'll have a Medicaid card and be able to get all those mandatory and optional services. If they have private health insurance, their private health insurance will be the primary payer of their health care, prescriptions, x-rays, doctor care, and Medicaid will be the secondary payer. In Virginia, we're moving away from using the word Medicaid. Virginia now calls the Medicaid program Cardinal Care. That's the brand. That's the name now assigned to Medicaid in Virginia. Same services, same program. Nothing changed except for the person's Medicaid card and what we call Medicaid in Virginia, and it is now Cardinal Care. One of those mandatory services that was back on one of the earlier slides is something called early and periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. And that's really important for us here tonight because EPSDT, early and periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment, is Medicaid or Cardinal Care to children under the age of 21. So Medicaid for this particular discussion of EPSDT is an individual under the age of 21. So this is for somebody who is eligible for Medicaid. So they got a Medicaid card, a Medicaid number. And the purpose of this is to ensure that children receive whatever they need in the realm of healthcare, so that any medical or healthcare condition is corrected or made better or maintained, ameliorated, made better. So the concept here is that children receive more services than adults in Medicaid because of this federal EPSDT requirement. This is an early and periodic screening. You know, it's kind of like the well baby checkups that are required at certain periods of time that most children have, even if they don't have Cardinal Care or Medicaid. You know, at the age of 6 months, they get this checkup. And the age of 5, they get this checkup. It's the same thing. There's a screening chart. These are the screenings that pediatricians or any primary care physician who participates in Medicaid has to ensure this screening happens for a child that they are providing services through Cardinal Care or Medicaid. And if in the course of doing that screening, doing the eye check, doing a hearing check, doing a developmental screening, they have a suspicion that maybe there is a disability or healthcare condition, it's that primary care physician or provider's responsibility to order or provide the necessary testing to see if, in fact, there is a diagnosis of a healthcare condition or disability. And if there is the diagnosis, then it is that primary care provider's responsibility to ensure that the treatment is provided to correct, maintain, or make better that healthcare condition or disability. Hearing aids for a child who was screened and determined to be deaf. Speech language therapy for a child who has a diagnosis of some sort of speech delay. Child is diagnosed with autism who may need some developmental services to ensure that those services are provided by the Medicaid program. In addition to that EPSDT and all those other mandatory services, Medicaid covers institutional placements. I know we don't like institutional placements. We're not trying to get people to choose institutional placements, but Medicaid covers hospitals, Medicaid covers nursing facilities, and Medicaid covers something called intermediate care facilities for persons with developmental disabilities, or ICFs. These ICFs can be 4 beds or larger. They are very tightly regulated, and they are institutional settings. People give up certain rights to go into these settings. They have certain protections when they go into these settings. Our region of the state has a very high proportion of these institutions. Chesapeake has the only state institution left open, which is the Chesapeake Training Center. St. Mary's in Norfolk is the largest child's institution in Virginia. So unfortunately, we have a lot of institutional placement here in the Hampton Roads area. So Medicaid covers those institutions. A home and community-based waiver, the waiver programs we're here to talk about. This is where the federal government is giving the states the opportunity to have flexibility to provide services as an alternative to institutional placement in a hospital, in a nursing facility, or those ICFs. So home and community-based waivers are for people with disabilities who it's been determined meet institutional criteria, but don't want to go into an institution and need support in the community. So it's waiving going into an institution. So meeting that institutional care criteria is important. And I know it kind of rubs us wrong because, we don't want people to go into institutions. We don't approach the system as, how do I get into an institution? But you need to have the type of needs that would be met in an institution to qualify for these home and community-based waivers. You never have to go to an institution. You never have to apply for an institution. You just have to have the same sort of needs that would have been met in an institutional setting. In Virginia, we have two types of these home and community-based waivers. The first is an alternative to placement in a nursing facility or a hospital. In our area, it would be a hospital like Children's Hospital, the King's Daughters, for a long period of time. That is called the Commonwealth Coordinated Care Plus Waiver. It's a mouthful, CCC Plus Waiver. It's an alternative to nursing facilities. Used to have different names over time, but this is what it's been called for many years now. And then the second group of waivers, the developmental disabilities waivers, DD waivers, are waivers to keep people out of those intermediate care facilities, those ICF institutions. There are three different DD waivers, developmental disability waivers. The building independence waiver, which replaced the day support waiver in 2016, the community living waiver, and the family and individual supports waiver. So there are three DD waivers, but when you go to apply for the DD waivers, you just apply for DD waivers. You don't apply specifically for the community living waiver or specifically for the building independence waiver. And it's confusing, and it's unfortunate that it's confusing, but it's just a representation of historically how these programs have been developed over the last 30 years. So we have three different DD waivers. Don't get all tied up in what waiver you're going to apply for, because you're just really applying for the DD waivers. And then which waiver you will actually receive will be based on availability and your needs. About 10 years ago, there was a settlement agreement between the U.S. Department of Justice and the Commonwealth of Virginia because of significant problems with services for people with developmental disabilities in Virginia. And there are four things that I want to call out to your attention that occurred as a part of this settlement agreement. There were many other things, but there are four things particularly. One of them is a program that was established called the Individual and Family Support Program. This program is an annual allocation of funds to people who are on the DD waivers waiting list. This is only for people who are on the DD waivers waiting list. More information can be found in the link that I've provided here. Some years it's been more money than other years, and it's an always evolving program. You can get information at that website. Crisis service for children and adults who are having some sort of behavioral or mental health crisis are available to children and adults with developmental disabilities through a program called REACH. And there's a website here. They provide services within a specific amount of time, depending on the type of emergency that you're having. For instance, they'll come to an emergency room if you're in an emergency room because of behavioral or a mental health crisis. There are integrated housing, integrated supported employment, and integrated day activities that have been established over the last 10 years because of the settlement agreement. So we've seen a tremendous growth in the type and number of services available through the DD waivers. And the last thing is really important for anybody at the age of transition, certainly, is called the State Rental Assistance Program. And this is a only state-funded program for people who are on the DD waivers wait list or receiving the DD waiver, and it will pay up to 70% of your rent. It sort of acts, if you've ever heard of something called a Section 8 voucher, it sort of acts like a Section 8 voucher in that it pays for your monthly rent, up to 70% of your monthly rent. It's a wonderful program. It's available to you there in Chesapeake. It is for individuals who are on the wait list or receiving the DD waivers. Now, some of the bad news. There are DD waivers have a waiting list. The waiting list is about 14,000 people long. That's a lot of people. Not everybody needs services within the next year. There are priorities 1, 2, and 3 on this waiting list. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So don't be deterred by this 14,000 number. It is a large number. We got to get these folks funded, but slots are slots. A waiver availability became became available for 600 people or 600 slots this summer, and 500 people will be served new in January, or 500 new slots will become available in January. But to even be considered, you got to get on that DD waivers waiting list. And that all happens through 40 community service boards, which are pretty much local government agencies. And we'll talk about yours there in Chesapeake in a few moments. So big waiting list. Don't be deterred. Get on the waiting list. There are 3 priority levels. You'll learn about that when you get on the waiting list. And you're going to contact your community services board because they're the ones that maintain the waiting list and get people assigned to those available slots. You will have case management available to you if you are a person with developmental disability. If your developmental disability is an intellectual disability, they call case management support coordination. So support coordination, case management, interchangeable. This is for persons who have developmental disabilities, and it helps them get their waiver supports in place, links you to supports and services in the community, waiver services, and other types of services. And this service is provided almost in our area exclusively by the community service boards. They can contract with private providers, but I do not believe any of our local CSBs are currently contracting with private providers. Commonwealth Coordinated Care is the Virginia Medicaid or Cardinal Care model of providing healthcare, managed care. So almost all of the Cardinal Care or Virginia Medicaid program is now offered exclusively through managed care. There are currently 5 of these managed care organizations that once you're enrolled in Medicaid, you can choose from. All of these contracts will be expiring for these 5 entities next year, and a new model of managed care is going to be put in place. But for now, these are the 5 choices that you have. There are a few people who are exempt from enrollment in managed care, but almost everybody now is enrolled in some sort of Medicaid managed care. If you are receiving the CCC Plus waiver, the waiver that keeps you out of nursing facilities, your waiver services are going to be controlled by your managed care company. Whatever Medicaid managed care company you choose, your CCC Plus waiver services will come through that managed care organization. If your waiver services are through one of the DD waivers, those DD waiver services are exempt or carved out of managed care, and that will be managed by the Community Services Board. So for the waiver, the CCC Plus waiver services are going to come through or be managed by your Medicaid managed care company. And for the DD waivers, the managed care company will not be controlling your waiver services. That will be done by the Community Services Board. All right, so let's talk about the CCC Plus waiver first. As I said, those services are going to be managed by your MCO or managed care organization. Okay, and that's really important because it can get confusing as to where your waiver services are coming through, and it's important to know which waiver you're enrolled in when the time comes that happens, so that you know kind of who you're coordinating all of this through. Now, to see if you're eligible for the CCC Plus waiver or the DD waivers, the first thing is to be screened to see if you meet the criteria for the waiver, not a financial application. Do not start with a financial application. You start with a screening, and you'll see in a moment who you're going to call to get that screening. After you're screened, then you will fill out a financial application. So that's a 2-step process, and it starts with screening, and then you do the financial eligibility. Now, you may be an individual who already has Medicaid or Cardinal Care, and in that case, you won't need to go through financial eligibility. None of the process of screening or eligibility has a cost associated to the person with the disability or their families. So for example, if you go to apply for the DD waiver and you have autism and they want a psychological evaluation as a part of that screening process, you cannot be charged or required to go out and pay for that evaluation through a psychological evaluation in my example. The financial criteria for these waivers or institutions, but for the waivers, is the first thing is you have to need long-term care, and that's waivers or institutions. So that's why you have to go through the screening first. Then when you go to do the financial application, your monthly income is limited in 2023. It will go up slightly in 2024, is limited to $2,742. So for the DD waivers, you cannot have more than monthly income than $2,742. For the CCC Plus waiver, if you have income higher than $2,742, there may be an opportunity for you to do something called a spend down, which is if you have a lot of out-of-pocket medical expenses. But we're not going to go through any of that tonight. That would be a good question to call about if your monthly income is above $2,742. You cannot have more than $2,000 in the bank, in stocks and bonds, basically any sort of resource that you could liquidate and use, no more than $2,000. Parent income and resources do not count regardless of the age of the child. So if the child is 14 and applying, has been screened for the waiver and found eligible for the waiver and is going to be receiving a waiver, not going on the waiting list, but receiving the waiver, then that 14-year-old child's parents' income and resources will not be counted. So the parent income and resources do not count once that waiver has been awarded. That's why so many more children receive Medicaid or Cardinal Care Services, because they're in one of these waivers. And if they were not receiving one of these waivers, they would not be eligible for Medicaid or Cardinal Care, because parent income would be considered, and it may be likely that they're not eligible. At the age of 18, if the individual has been receiving Medicaid before the age of 18, at the age of 18, they have to go through something called disability determination. And that is really important for transition age families to be aware of. And again, if you're of that age, we'd be glad to talk with you more about that. There's also something that is very important for young people or people with disabilities of any age to pay attention to, and that's employment. Medicaid wants to encourage people to be employed. And so they have developed this program called Medicaid Works. Federally, it's called the Medicaid Buy-In. But this is for people with disabilities who need Medicaid, but who are working or want to work. And you have to enroll in this Medicaid Works program before your monthly income goes above $1,677. That goes up a few dollars every year. So the idea is you're receiving Medicaid, you graduated from high school, you're ready to be employed, but before your income goes above $1,677 a month, you want to enroll in Medicaid Works to protect your long-term access to Medicaid. And again, we can walk you through that process, but basically, if you do this before your monthly income goes above $1,677, you will likely be eligible to keep your Medicaid and earn up to $75,000 a year and save up to $46,000 before you would be removed from Medicaid. It's very important, especially for youth of transition age. Special Needs Trust and other things are there to try to encourage people to save money, but to protect that money from being considered or deemed by the Medicaid program and other programs. So there are two ways to do this, either through Special Needs Trust or something called ABLE accounts. And again, you can give us a call. There's a few links here with some great information to help you learn about these things and see whether or not this would be something that would be beneficial so that you can save money and not have that count against your eligibility for public assistance. If you have private health insurance through an employment situation, you're employed or you're a young person with a disability and your parents are employed and getting health insurance through their private employer, you may be eligible for a program called Health Insurance Premium Payment. This is a wonderful program. Remember when I said early at the program, the discussion, Medicaid is going to be the secondary payer if you have private health insurance, and Medicaid's going to be your primary, private health insurance will be primary, and Medicaid will be secondary. Medicaid loves that. DMAS likes that. They like to be the secondary payer. So they want to encourage you not to drop private health insurance through your employer. And they may pay for a portion or all of the family health insurance premium through that private employer, depending on the type of health insurance that is. So it's definitely something to look into if you have health insurance that's pretty comprehensive health insurance through your private employer or the family, parent's private employer. So another financial consideration. If in fact you do have monthly income above $1,508, that number goes up a few dollars every year. So the person with the disability has income above $1,508. They may have to pay, it's called a patient pay for some of their waiver services. Now, if they have more than $1,508 a month of income, and it's because they're working, they probably won't have to pay a patient pay. But if they're getting that income above $1,508 through, let's say, Social Security disability income or child support or whatever, they may have to pay all the money above $1,508 a month as patient pay towards their Medicaid services. I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff out there at you. And, I hope you'll have a chance to review these slides in more detail than what we're able to cover tonight. And then, of course, call us if you have questions. Okay, so a waiver, home and community-based waiver is an alternative to institutional placement. You never, ever, ever have to apply or be placed in an institution first. That's not what it's about. You just have to meet the care criteria. So who do you contact? Okay, so if you want to get the CCC Plus waiver, you want to stay out of a nursing facility, you're going to call in Chesapeake the number listed if you're an adult and a separate number if you're calling to request a screening for a child. Now, if the child or adult is already in the hospital, let's say that you have some sort of surgery or accident and you're already in the hospital, for the CCC Plus waiver, the hospital can do the screening before you're discharged. And that's a really good way to get it done because the screening teams at these two phone numbers for adults and children that are listed for the CCC Plus waiver, they have 30 days to do that screening. So if you unfortunately happen to be in a hospital setting, you want to request that screening before you get discharged so that you don't have to wait that 30 days. That's for the CCC Plus waiver. To be screened for the DD waivers, it's a totally different process, totally different place. And in Chesapeake, it's at the Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health Care. And that's the name of the local government agency that serves as the Community Services Board for Chesapeake. And you see their phone number. You would call this phone number to request a screening for the DD waivers. You don't have to say, I'm requesting screening for the community living waiver or the family and individual supports waiver. You just call and request a screening for the DD waivers. So the DD waivers is the bottom half of this slide, and the CCC Plus waiver screening is the top half of this slide. You call and request a screening, and they'll walk you through that beginning of that process and get an appointment scheduled. Okay, so for the DD waiver, again, the DD waivers are those three waivers listed here. Now, what is a developmental disability? Developmental disability is a chronic disability. It is something other than a mental illness. Now, somebody can have spina bifida and mental illness. They can't just have mental illness. They have to have another condition or disability, but they can have mental illness. It's just that mental illness cannot be their only disability. The disability has to occur before the age of 22. It's a disability that's likely going to continue indefinitely, and the disability causes the person to have limitations in 3 or more major life activities, and they're listed here: learning, self-direction, independent living, self-care, and so forth. So that's kind of the definition of a developmental disability. Some examples of developmental disabilities could be autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, muscular dystrophy. It's just that the disability has to occur before the age of 22, likely to continue indefinitely, and result in 3 or more limitations in 3 or more areas. When you call Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health and request a screening for the DD waivers, they're going to complete a form called the VIDES. And this form is used to determine, do you meet the care criteria for an ICF, intermediate care facility institution, which is the same screening criteria as for the DD waivers, okay? And you're just going to, obviously choose to get the DD waiver, opt for the DD waivers over the institutional placement. This VIDES or screening tool, once you're enrolled in the waiver, will be completed annually just to document that you still need waiver services. The VIDES focuses on 8 areas of life: mobility, communication, learning, healthcare, independent living, and so forth. You have to have significant needs in 2 or more of those 8 areas if you're an infant, and children and adults have to have needs in 3 or more of the 8 areas. The 8 areas are listed here. Just went over some of those. So there are 3 DD waivers. This first waiver, the Building Independence Waiver, the BI waiver, is only for adults. You have to be an adult. You have to be living in your own home, either leasing or owning your home. And it's intended for people with developmental disabilities who have minimal support needs. So this is not for somebody who needs significant support. It's minimal. This waiver tends to have a lot more availability because a lot of people with developmental disabilities need more than what the BI waiver would provide. As a part of the material that you'll have tonight, in addition to the slides, you'll have a document that outlines the 20-some, almost 30 services that are available through the DD waivers. But not all 3 of the DD waivers offer all 20-some services. The Building Independence Waiver primarily focuses on residential support, and a minimal amount of residential support at that. The second DD waiver is called the Community Living Waiver, the CL waiver. This is for people who live in their own homes, live in their family homes, live in a shared apartment, wherever they want to live. It can include extensive supports. There's about 27 services available, employment services, in-home training services, group home services, segregated group homes, sponsored residential services. So there's a lot of services available in the Community Living Waiver. This waiver is the tightest waiver, the hardest waiver to get into because the fewest available new slots are in this category. And the third waiver, used to just be referred to as the DD waiver, is now referred to as the Family and Individual Supports Waiver. This also is for anybody who needs extensive supports. Can include medical or behavioral supports. Basically, the Community Living Waiver, I went way too far. Boy, oh boy, did I mess up here. The Community Living Waiver and I'm sorry to be scrolling through here, but I want to get us back to where we were. And going the opposite way. The community living waiver and the FIS waiver, the two DD waivers that offer the most services, the community living waiver and the FIS waiver are almost identical. The only difference in the community living waiver, you can live in a segregated group home or a sponsored residential home, which is the home of another family. In the family and individual supports waiver, you must live in an integrated setting. You must live in your own home, a shared home, your family's home, somebody else's home, but it can't be a licensed residential facility. That's the big difference between the CL and the FIS waiver. Both of them can provide 24-hour supports. Both of them can provide lots of behavioral medical supports. They both provide assistive technology, home modifications, lots of services. The difference is the CL waiver provides group home and sponsored residential, and the FIS waiver does not. That's the difference.
Ms. Hallowell,
Yes.
you have a question in the chat. Does
Right.
the community living waiver pay for a family member to be the caregiver?
It depends. It depends on the needs of the individual. It depends on the family situation. Depends on the documentation that nobody else is available to provide that support. Depends on what other services have been tried and shown not to be successful. So I would say in the community living and in the family and individual supports waiver, some services can be provided by the parent, a family member, by the parent, depending on the circumstances and the documentation that has been developed showing that nobody else is available to provide that support. So it's possible, but lots of hoops to jump through. And in many situations, it's something that the family does because they just feel they can't find somebody else or that nobody else is going to be appropriate. And in some of those situations that can be true. And in other situations, the case manager just needs to kind of roll up their sleeves with the person with the disability and family to figure out of the 27 services if in fact there is a way for the individual to receive support not from the parent, so that the parent, and especially if it's an adult with a developmental disability, they can lead natural lives and not one where one is the paid provider. So it's possible.
Thank you so much.
So the DD waivers wait list. Long wait list, 14,000 people. It's only for the DD waivers. So you got to get screened. If you don't call Chesapeake Behavioral Integrated Behavioral Health and get on the waiting list, you're never going to get there. So don't let that 14,000 number deter you. Get screened. About 35% of the people on the DD waivers waiting list also qualify for the CCC Plus waiver. So they'll use the CCC Plus waiver while they're waiting for the DD waiver. And so you'll say, well, why would I bother with the DD waiver if I can get in the CCC Plus waiver? Well, the CCC Plus waiver offers many fewer services than the DD waivers. So the CCC Plus waiver for some families and individuals is a way to get some support while you're waiting for the more comprehensive services of the DD waivers. But not everybody who's on the DD waivers waiting list will qualify for the CCC Plus waiver. About 35% of the people will. There's two different screening processes for these two different waivers, two different criteria. We've gone through the DD waiver criteria. They're going to use that VIDE screening. They're looking for significant needs in those life activities. Okay. Now, the DD waiver waiting list, there used to be an old waiting list for what was called the intellectual disabilities waiver and a second waiting list for people with developmental disabilities who did not have an ID diagnosis. And that all changed in 2016, and there's just now one big waiting list. The Community Services Board, or in the situation there in Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health, the case managers there decide whether or not you're priority 1, 2, or 3. And the Community Services Board manages the process of somebody who is on the waiting list being referred to a slot assignment committee to determine who gets the next available funding available in Chesapeake. So priority 1 is for individuals who need services within 1 year who meet specific criteria. And the criteria are things like the caregivers have died or are no longer available. The person is homeless. They have an open record with Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services. So there is also one of the criteria for priority 1 are individuals who have either aged out at 22 from public education, they've left school because they've aged out at 22, or they earned a regular diploma. So if that person with cerebral palsy, a developmental disability, earns a regular diploma at the age of 19, they can go on priority 1. They don't have to wait until they age out. So you either graduate with a standard diploma or an advanced diploma, or you age out at 22, and that could put you on priority 1. Priority 2 waiting list are for people who need services 1 to 5 years out, and priority 3 are people who would need waiver services in the next after 5 years, longer than 5 years out. So those are the priority 1, 2, and 3. Your case manager or support coordinator at the Community Services Board is going to help determine which priority level you're on. When you're assigned to a priority level, you will be given a wait list letter telling you what priority level you're in. If your situation changes throughout the year, because these priority levels should be updated every year if changes are needed, or any time during the year, if there is a significant change, you want to be sure to let your case manager know, so that if you need to be considered differently between priority 1, 2, and 3, that can happen. So you're seeing the importance of developing and maintaining that contact with the local Community Services Board, right? These slot assignment committees are not made up of the Community Services Board, Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health. They don't have a slot assignment committee. The committee is made up of community members, and those community members receive information in written format from the case managers of the people the case managers have determined to be in the highest need. And then the slot assignment committees determine who will be awarded the available slots. All right, I'm going to move us over to the CCC Plus waiver. Now, the CCC Plus waiver is a combination of an old waiver called the EDCD waiver and the technology assisted waiver. Nothing changed about services or eligibility. It's just they combined the 2 names and 2 programs. This is for somebody of any age, so infants, or somebody who is elderly. So it can be of any age. It doesn't have to just be somebody who is older, but you must meet nursing facility criteria. That criteria is determined based on a screening tool called a uniform assessment instrument. If it's a child, somebody 17 or younger who's being screened, the Department of Health also has an additional tool they can use that's kind of more appropriate chronological age-wise. And again, if you're in a hospital, the hospital can do that screening. This uniform assessment instrument, it's a 12 or 14-page document, goes through a whole lot more information than does the screening tool that we talked about for the DD waivers. It's going to talk about all kinds of functional needs and your health needs and the social support that you have and so forth. The criteria for this waiver, we have a 1-page handout that will be posted with this PowerPoint. This one-page handout gives you this information in a little more detail. For the CCC Plus waiver, which is the same as nursing facility screening criteria, you have to have 4 things. The financial information we talked about earlier, your income levels. Family income is disregarded. But anyways, the 3 things here that you really want to focus on are functional needs, nursing needs, and your risk of being placed in a nursing facility. Those are the 3 things that screening team is going to be focused on. We say screening team because if you're an adult, it's a nurse from the Department of Health and a social worker from the Department of Social Services. In Chesapeake, the team is really a nurse and then the physician who oversees the Department of Health, who will review the documentation completed by the nurse. They're looking at 3 things. Functional needs. You have to have a certain high-level need with things that are called activities of daily living. Bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, things like that. And then a combination of needs in behavior or mobility or joint motion or medication administration. And there's a variety of combinations that make up this very specific functional needs criteria. And again, we'll be glad to walk through that with you individually, and you'll have a front and page sheet that will go into that in more detail. In addition to that functional needs category, you must have a medical or nursing need to get the CCC Plus waiver. You must have a medical or nursing need. Now, this could be participating in speech therapy at school on a monthly basis. It could be doing private occupational therapy. It could be, the use of oxygen, the monitoring for dehydration. It can be lots of things that maybe you're not thinking, oh, that's a medical need. But you must have a nursing or medical need. And then the third category is you have to be at risk of placement in a nursing facility. You don't have to apply for a nursing facility. You don't have to go to a nursing facility. But you have to have something happening in your life that's causing things to have changed, or it's always been this way and you just can't keep going this way, and that's placing you at risk of going into a nursing facility. So it could be things like, let's say it's especially in our area, it's a 2-parent family and one of the parents is going out to sea. So things are changing in that home. And, this 14-year-old with cerebral palsy, who's both parents working together, used to be able to make this happen. They can't make it happen anymore. One parent working, one parent at home all the time, caring for the children, whatever. The other parent's gone off to sea, and they need this help now. Things have changed. Maybe there are 4 children in the family, and the 2 oldest children have moved out, and they're not there to support their sibling anymore. It could be that the parents' work schedule has changed, and now they always have to work evenings, so there's nobody at home to care for or provide the support for this individual with the disability in the evenings. There has to be a reason that you would seek out nursing facility support if you did not receive this waiver. Functional needs, nursing needs, and somehow be able to have a legitimate, true description of why now there's a risk of nursing facility placement. Don't have to go there, never have to apply, but you have to have the need. The services for the CCC Plus waiver are listed here. Obviously not 27 services like in the DD waivers, but important services. Personal care and respite are often used by people who are using the CCC Plus waiver. There is a method of receiving services, or a model, called consumer direction or consumer directed services. And this is where somebody had asked a question earlier about, can a parent be paid to provide support? This is one of the models where often a parent will be paid to provide supports if there's no one else available to provide those supports. The consumer-directed model is where the person with a disability or somebody acting on their behalf, especially if this is the child receiving services, somebody will act as the employer of record. They will be, as far as the Internal Revenue Services is considered, as far as the Federal Department of Labor considered, they are formally the employer. And the staff, the attendant, the companion, the respite worker, the staff would not be employed by a traditional agency, but will be employed by that employer of record. The person with the disability would employ their own staff, or somebody acting on behalf of the person with the disability would hire the companion, the respite provider, personal care aide, and so forth. So the choice and the control of who they work with remains with the individual or their family. The services that are available through this consumer-directed model are in red font here. Personal care through EPSDT and that Medicaid works. Through community living waiver and family and individual supports waiver, companion, personal care, and respite services can be through consumer direction. And Commonwealth Coordinated Care has personal care and respite as available through a consumer-directed model. So companion, personal care, and respite can be provided through this consumer-directed model or through a traditional home agency model. Or it can be both. You could have respite through agency and personal care through consumer direction. You can even split it within that. You could have 20 hours a week of personal care through an agency and 20 hours a week of support through consumer direction. Depending on which waiver you're enrolled in and what your choices are and what your needs are, you're going to have different people involved in this consumer-directed model. If you're using the CCC Plus waiver, you're going to have a healthcare coordinator through your Medicaid managed care company, and they're going to be involved in approving the number of hours of consumer-directed services you receive and other services you receive. But the managed care healthcare coordinator will be involved if you're enrolled in the CCC Plus waiver. If you're enrolled in the DD waivers, then your DD or ID case manager at the community or the Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health will be involved. And you can choose to have a services facilitator, which is a third person, which is an agency paid by Medicaid to help you learn about consumer direction, help you troubleshoot getting your staff paid and other problems that may come up. They will monitor your services initially at 30, 60, and 90 days, and then every 90 days after that, or more often if needed. So you may have 3 people involved, or 2 people involved, your service facilitator, and then either your healthcare coordinator through CCC Plus and your case manager if it's one of the DD waivers. So you have lots of people involved to help you out and using your consumer-directed services. So
we got a question in the chat.
Yeah, Christina?
Oh, sorry. We have a parent that's on the DD waiver waiting list. The son is 22 and had just aged out of public education. They moved from priority 3 to priority 2 after being on the wait list for 15 years. The question is, what other circumstances do we need to be qualified for priority 1?
If your son or daughter has aged out of public school, which it sounds like they have, you need to call Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health, your CSB, and let your case manager know, because they won't know to move you up to priority 1 unless you call them. So you can call the Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health at the number on an earlier slide and ask to talk to somebody in the Developmental Disabilities Service Unit. And when you get to that point, then you want to let them know you need to talk with a case manager. And because I'm assuming, and I may be wrong, your assumptions are that your son or daughter already has Medicaid. And if that's the case, then Cardinal Care or Virginia Medicaid is going to pay the Community Services Board $326 a month to meet with you and keep your information current as if things change or if you have needs. Now, they're not going to see you just on a routine basis because they can make $326. I don't mean to imply that at all. My point was, if you need to see them, like for this change, don't feel like you're putting somebody out. They could get paid to do that. So don't hesitate. That was my point.
I think I have a follow-up to that, is that Chesapeake Integrated Behavioral Health knows and are aware that he has aged out.
Then they should have moved him to priority 1. You can go on, imagine at this point you're aware of WAMS, which is an electronic system that you can go into at any time and update your information and check your status. If you don't know how to access WAMS, we can describe that to you, or your case manager really would be the one, ideally, that would sit with you and show you how to maneuver through that system. So your case manager would be the one responsible to ensuring you get moved to priority 1 at the age of no longer being eligible for public education.
One more question. If you're a licensed congregate care home, can you provide respite services?
I'm assuming that would be a group home, and I don't even know why a group home would provide respite services, because they're already providing 24-hour services. It could be, and I'm just guessing here, that the individual is living in a group home and wanting to leave the group home to go on vacation with family members and maybe needs a companion during that period of time. Glenn, we'd be glad to talk with you if you want to give us a call.
It is a group home.
Yeah. They're providing 24-hour support now, so there wouldn't be respite in the group home. Although there are group homes that provide only respite. So a person with a disability is not living in that group home. That's not their residence. But for some reason, this person with the developmental disability needs respite for a period of time. Maybe they live with a single parent and the parent has to go into the hospital. And so this person with the developmental disability needs to go somewhere for support 24 hours a day since their parent won't be at their family home. A group home can be licensed to provide respite to individuals who are not residents of that group home. I'm really going in the weeds there, though, so sorry.
And we got another. Once a person is approved for a waiver, is it permanent or do they have to reapply again every few years?
Great. They will be rescreened every year. It's usually, you don't even realize it's happening. It's kind of like most people's disabilities don't change that significantly. And you will do a new financial application every year. Now, during COVID, for 3-year period, that annual financial evaluate or redetermination was kind of set aside, but all of that is happening now again. So you will do a financial renewal every year, and you will go through the original screening tool every year to see that you still meet that care criteria. Providers can be a real issue. There are shortages of providers in some areas of the state. Our area of the state is pretty rich in providers. We have quite a few providers of most services. You do have the right to choose your providers and change providers if a provider isn't working out for you. And a list of providers for each of the services that you're eligible for will be given to you by your case manager. Were you going to ask a question, Christina?
No, we're good.
Okay. So there is a process that you can go through if you believe that something is not going right within the Medicaid system. Basically, you can challenge decisions regarding your Medicaid eligibility, your Medicaid services. If you believe that services are being refused, services are being reduced, services are being just taken away that you've always had, within 30 days of that notice to you that something is going to be changing, you can appeal that. And there's an appeal form on the state DMAS website that you would fill out. And then within 90 days, there would be a decision from a hearing officer that is employed at the state Medicaid or Cardinal Care office. If you're enrolled in the CCC Plus waiver and your disagreement is about something with your waiver services, you will first have to make a request to your managed care organization to reconsider before you do your appeal through the state Medicaid agency. Now, Medicaid fraud is not something anybody wants to talk about, certainly not anything somebody wants to do, but it is really important to be aware of what Medicaid fraud is. Medicaid fraud doesn't just happen by providers, it can happen by the very people who are using Medicaid. So for providers, it could be that they bill for something inappropriate. For a person with a disability, it could be that they're using services they don't need, that's an inappropriate service. It could be misrepresentation or withholding of information. It's just really important to be honest. Our Virginia Medicaid program is really broad in who it covers and in financial eligibility criteria. There's no reason to try to work around the system. The system works if we work with it. If we don't have integrity about how we use the system, the whole Medicaid system fails because that lack of integrity. So it's important that we all be honest and we use these services as needed. There are ongoing changes all the time, and it's important to stay current with what's happening once you get enrolled in a waiver, especially. And there are a number of ways to do that, and whether it's through a disability-specific organization that you're involved with, or in some way just connecting to an organization and getting their newsletters. There was the public health emergency, which was during COVID, formally ended at the federal level on May 11th of this year. There were many changes made to Medicaid waivers that were temporary during that public health emergency of COVID. They were called Appendix K changes. And all of these things are ending, these exceptions and changes, by November 11th. Some of them have ended already. These were things with expanded telehealth for medical services and for some waiver services. One of the other changes was that parents of minor-age children and spouses were allowed to be paid to provide waiver personal care during the public health emergency. That allowance is going to be continued indefinitely. It's a part of the state Medicaid plan now, and there's a process underway to allow that to continue even beyond November 11th. Again, your financial redetermination process was put on hold March 2020 because of COVID. That process has started again this spring. And it's really important that you provide any updated contact information to whoever you see most involved in your Medicaid services or your local Department of Social Services or the website listed at the bottom of this page. They need your current information to ensure you stay enrolled in Medicaid. And here's our contact information at the Independence Center. So I know we went over a lot here quickly tonight. I hope it sparked your interest in some of this and that you will share this information with others and reach out if you have other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. I greatly appreciate all of your wealth of knowledge. And again, I want to thank Christina for handling the Q&A for us this evening. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to the Independence Center, and the number is located on the screen, 757-461-8007. At this time, This concludes our webinar on Medicaid waivers. Again, I'd like to thank Maureen and Christina for being on this webinar tonight with our families. Remember that the webinar has been recorded and will be uploaded onto our Chesapeake Public Schools YouTube page within the next several days. Thank you, families, for joining us. And remember, families and communities work better together. Thank you and have a good evening.